بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we are resuming with the tafsir Surah Al-Insan, and so throughout this chapter, as we were getting closer and closer to the conclusion, throughout this chapter we discussed a number of things. One was the thalathu halat. There were three states of the human being. One was before he existed, before man existed. The second is after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created man and placed him into a test. And the third is the condition of the people in the hereafter. So after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned two groups of people. He mentioned the disbelievers and what Allah ta'ala prepared for them of punishment, such as salasil and chains and shackles and a blazing fire. Then Allah Ta'ala after that discusses one of the three categories of the believers, and He discusses their sifat, their characteristics, and the jaza, the recompense for them. And they are the abrar. The abrar are also the muqtasidun. They are those who observe the commands of Allah Ta'ala. They stay away from His prohibitions, Allah yubarik fikum, but they don't do more than that. So they are muqtasid yaqtasirun ala fi'l al-wajibat wa tark al-muharramat. They limit themselves to doing what Allah obliged, staying away from what He forbade. They don't do extra optional acts of worship, the sunan, recommended things, mustahabbat, and they may do some disliked things. So some from the characteristics of the abrar is that they fulfill their vows, and they fear a day whose evil is widespread. And does anybody remember some of the other characteristics in Surah Al-Insan? Some of the sifat of the abrar: يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. They feed others, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they only do that seeking the face of Allah. Right? So they have ikhlas in their acts of worship, and they give from what they love, which means it's not just a type of giving where you just want to get rid of things, or giving from the food that they don't like, but they're giving while they desire that, and they're hungry and they want that food for themselves, or they're in need of it and they give it to others. This is from the characteristics of the abrar. Then Allah Ta'ala mentions those with those characteristics, they're going to have this in paradise. What are they going to have in paradise? The things that we chase after in this dunya, okay, they will have in paradise and much more. What are some of the things that we like to have in this world? Money. So that we can do what with the money? So that's the thing. The money is a sebab. It is it's a means that leads to something else, right? More women, one says. I didn't say it. Food, drink, shelter. This is why we want the money, because the money is what gives us the things that we want, the luxuries we desire, to be comfortable, to be happy, to be joyous. Okay? Allah Ta'ala, we're not deprived of that. The believers aren't deprived of that in the hereafter. And that also includes things that are not mentioned in this surah but in other places, such as intimacy. Something that from the people of the book, they don't say there is. That makes you wonder and think why they don't chase after the hereafter like the Muslims do. Hey, subhanAllah, no intimacy in the hereafter. Why would I want to leave this place? SubhanAllah, is how they made it such that the hereafter, heaven to them, so like the Christians, for instance, heaven to them, they don't believe in, or at least a share of them don't believe in intimacy between spouses. So then you would imagine, as much as they show themselves that they desire that in this world, you see how hard they cling on to this world. In Islam, the believers, when they go to the hereafter, they will have those luxuries and those things that they desire in this world and the hereafter, and much better. So from that is the clothing. All right, there are two things of clothing that are mentioned in this surah. Who remembers? Sundus wa istabrak. Sundus is a fine silk. Istabrak is a thicker silk, and it's in the color of green. Then there's also cups that they will drink from, and those cups will have wine, but they won't be intoxicated. They won't get drunk. They won't get nauseous and sick and have hangovers. but rather in the hereafter it will be a drink that is absolutely great. What's the name of the spring mentioned in this surah? Who remembers? Something else. Salsabil. This is a spring that's meant in this chapter especially. Okay, so after Allah Ta'ala mentioned this, Allah mentioned the rewards, then coming near close to the end of this chapter, now we continue from there. Allah Ta'ala said, Inna nahnu nazzalna alayka al-Qur'ana tanzila. Allah said, we've sent down the Qur'an to you in tanzil, in stages. Yaqulu Shaykh, this means mufarraqan, we sent it down to you bit by bit, munajjaman. فالقرآن لم ينزل جملة واحدة. The Qur'an didn't come down at once, the whole book at once. وإنما نزل مفرقا على حسب الوقائع والحوادث في مدة 23 سنة. It came down for a period of how many years? 23 years. And this was the life of the messenger, as the lifetime of the messenger as a messenger. وكان القرآن ينزل عليه في المناسبات. The Quran came to him in particular circumstances that were suitable بالتدريج, in stages, little by little. لأن القرآن لو نزل جملة واحدة, if the Quran was brought down all together, ما استطاع الناس أن يعملوا به, the people would not be able to implement it. فهذا من رحمة الله أنه أنزله مفرقا. So this is a mercy from Allah that in the time of wahi, في زمن الوحي, in the time of revelation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the Quran down little by little, and there was a reason for this, as the verse in the Quran where Allah mentions the hikmah behind that. قال الله تعالى وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة. The disbelievers, they asked, or they had a shubha, why wasn't the Quran revealed to him all at once? يقولون, they're saying, why didn't the Quran come to the messenger all in one time, the whole book? And this was from their stubbornness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained the reason in that, the wisdom in that. فَقَالَ كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Allah said the reason is so that we may make your heart firm. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And we have رَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, يعني we brought it in tartil, يعني تدريج. We brought it down to you in stages so that your heart may be firm. Now I ask you a question. If you have a plant, okay, you have the soil, right? And you have a plant. It's not fully grown. If you just pour a bunch of water into the pot of the plant and then leave it, what happens to the plant? But if you give the plant a little bit of water each day or every few days, what happens to the plant? It grows to its fullest. It grows to its fullest. وَهَكَذَا الْقُرْآنِ تَنْزِيلُ الْقُرْآنِ. The Quran coming down, little by little, it strengthened the believers, هَكَذا, just like this. So, this was in order to strengthen and make the heart of the Prophet ﷺ firm. Also to make it easy to practice. To make it easy for them to practice and to develop throughout those years. So anytime an event or an occurrence took place, then verses would come down in accordance with those. You have the sabab nuzul, you had certain circumstances, certain things happen, and then revelation came down, it would teach. Notice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, nahnu, we. How do you explain to the Christian or the non-Muslim, who already his mind is polluted with مثلا tathlith, or his mind is polluted with aliha, the i'tiqad of aliha, fables that came from the Greeks and the Romans. The Trinity, God is three or multiple gods. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we, how do we explain that to them when Allah refers to himself as we in the Quran? The Christian will say, look, your book says we. Yes, it does. It means Allah. But how do we, the Muslim, you live in America, if you live in America, you got to know these things. Living in a country of America, you need to know how to respond to these types of things. It's very weak shubha coming from them because they do it all the time, but they don't know. So how do we explain and respond back to them? Well, your book is encouraging the multiplicity of gods. Your book says God refers to himself as we many times in the Quran. Doesn't he? We. Look, they'll show it to you. We sent it down. Who's we? God and Jesus? A'udhu billah. How do you refer? Yes. Yes. Damir al-azama. In the Arabic language, we can be used to refer to one person, one thing. Okay? Allah does this with himself. In the English language, it's the same thing. Anybody who studied English, they know that the word we does not have to mean more than one person. It doesn't have to be plural. ما يجب لا بالعربية ولا بالإنجليزية. In English, we'll give you an example. What does the queen say when she gives an ordinance, a command, an order, a decree? We, the Queen of England. How many queens are there? واحد بس. But she says نحن, we the Queen of England. And so in the English language, we is used for a person who is of esteem and high status. If they're a person of power, they can say we. All right? Or even in the common daily usage of language, if a person wants to make their business look a little bigger, in ordinary daily language, for example, you have a man who's maybe has an online business. You go to his website. It's just one person behind the website. It's independent, private owned business. He started himself. And then it says, contact us. Who's us? Why didn't it say contact me? It's one person. You don't need to change it. Even if it's one person, they'll say, we would love to provide you such and such services. If somebody calls a person, he's a person that goes and washes people's cars, and they contact him on the phone, but they don't get him, but they get his answering machine. He said, thank you for contacting such and such car wash. We would love to talk to you in such and such. He doesn't say I. Why do they do that though? There's a reason in that. Why we and not I? It makes his business look bigger. It's his language. Okay? We does not have to mean wahid. Ma yajib. Not in Arabic, not in English. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we, then this is to magnify, show the magnificence and the grandeur and the mighty one Allah, mighty God. Wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. Your God is one God. The Shaykh says هذا من باب التعظيم. الواحد يقول نحن من باب التعظيم. حتى إن الملوك يقولون نحن فلان ابن فلان نأمر بكذا. Same thing, the example that we were giving. The Shaykh says that this is for veneration, to make big. Yani when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we. And this is even with the case of creation, kings and so on and so forth. They will say we, the king of so-and-so, son of so-and-so, whatever. We order this. We give our decree to do such and such. But Allah Ta'ala then says, فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ afterwards. He says to his Prophet ﷺ, be patient with the decree, or be patient with the command, the rule, the order of your Lord. أي استعين بالصبر. Be patient with the decree of your Lord. Yani seek help in patience على تحمل هذه الأمانة. Seek help in being patient with bearing this major responsibility. هذا القرآن والعمل به. The Quran and implementing it, because this is not a light thing and it's not an easy thing. وَالدَّعْوَ إِلَيْهِ, and inviting others to it. It's extremely difficult. It's not a light thing. وَالْجِهَادِ فِي سَبِيلِ, and fighting and struggling in His cause. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We have sent down to you a heavy, weighty word, the Quran, such that when revelation came to the Prophet, it would weigh on him, alayhi salatu wasalam. فَالَّذِي يُعِينُ الرَّسُولِ هُوَ الصَّبْرُ وَكَذَلِكَ الصَّبْرُ عَلَى أَذَى الْكُفَّارِ فَالصَّبْرُ عُدَّةُ الْمُتَّقِينَ. He said, so what would help the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam is patience. And patience will also assist him and us against the harm of non-Muslims. Likewise, patience, it is like what the people of piety need to have. The tools for the muttaqeen, I guess we could say. ثم قال ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا. Allah said, be patient with the order of your Lord and don't obey any sinner or ingrate disbeliever among them. Listen closely, because we're going to tie this into living here in America. فإنك ستلاقي من الكفار والمنافقين من يريد صرفك عن هذا القرآن يحاول معك أن تترك هذا القرآن أو تترك بعضه فلا تطع آثما بأفعاله كفورا بقلبه. He says you are going to encounter from the disbelievers, from hypocrites, and there are hypocrites in our country, ibadallah, Muslim men and Muslim women. We have munafiqun. A munafiq is a person who acts like they're Muslim. They come into the ranks of the Muslims. And they have an agenda behind it. This actually increased post 9/11. This increased post 9/11, after 9/11, because they needed to have spies. This is a reality. So people had jobs and positions. They come into the Masjid as Muslims. They would say that they didn't believe at all. So they can come into the ranks. And they wanted to see if there were terrorists here in this masjid and that masjid. Alhamdulillah, this masjid is free of that. We've warned against terrorism for ages. Walillahi alhamd. However, that's what was happening. So when a person comes in the form of a Muslim, but he doesn't really believe, he's a munafiq. Nifaq i'tiqadi, هذا كفر بالله. هو كافر حقيقة. He's really a disbeliever. But he says he's a Muslim. So في الظاهر هو مسلم وفي الباطن كافر. لا يؤمن بالله ولا برسوله. He doesn't believe in Allah or His Messenger. He comes into ranks for his position. One, to get a paycheck. That's his job. Two, whatever his employer wants him to do. We need you to get this type of information. We need you to get this. You need to do that. That's what they do. That's their work. But this person, that is an example of a munafiq. Nifaq akbar. Because nifaq, from the sifat, you can find it in some Muslims. Like if a Muslim lies a lot, this is a characteristic of nifaq. This is called nifaq asghar, lesser hypocrisy. But nifaq akbar, the bigger hypocrisy, is when they disbelieve in their heart. And they claim to be Muslim. We have that now. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تُطِعْ مِنْهُمْ آثِمًا أَوْ كَفُورًا. Don't obey any sinner among them, nor the ingrate disbeliever. What falls into that is the people that you encounter in your daily life from the non-Muslims and from people who munafiqun, which will be difficult to detect. Because they say they're Muslim, you wouldn't be able to tell. They have sifat, awsaf, in the Quran explains them. But the point is that you will encounter these kinds of people in your life. You will, you have to, especially when you're living in the lands of non-Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling His Prophet, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was among the disbelievers, Kuffar Quraysh, and other than them, min ahl al-kitab, min al-yahud, min mushrik al-arab. They will try to take you away from the Quran. They will try to get you to abandon the Quran in its entirety, to leave the Quran, or they will try to get you to leave some of the Quran. So Allah is telling His Prophet, don't obey them. Don't listen to them. Now I tell you, ibadallah, at your job, at the school you go to, at the university that you go to, the same thing applies. We're not at war with the people here, but you have individuals that will come to you, communities of people and organizations, if you will, organizations and groups that will come to you and try to divert you from the Quran, practicing your religion. I'm going to give you an example, and this is not far off. University. It's a liberal society. Most of the universities are built on liberaliyya, qawa'id al-liberaliyya. Most of the universities, if not all of them here. So what that means is they give recognition to rights of minorities. Minorities. Are Muslims a minority group? Yes. But who else is a minority group? Huh? Gays. That's a minority group as well. African Americans, minority group. Being a minority group, and their belief that every minority group should have their rights, they will come to you in a fashion of catering to your needs. Okay, so they'll tell you, you know what, we love, practice your religion. We will even try to help you find a place to worship. But there's a condition. There's a condition. If we are going to support you, we want you to support us too. So here's what LGBT comes in. You have a center which includes gender rights and women's rights. Due to the lack of rights, they have similarities to minority groups, okay? Now, why is it that LGBT, gender rights, which is under gender rights, and women's rights, why are they placed together? They're placed together because in the 1960s, when the women's rights movement was kicking in, the gay rights movement wasn't really following along, wasn't strong like the women's rights movement. So gay rights activists, they followed behind the women's rights activists. You know, like kind of holding onto a tail, following behind them. They thought, well, they're claiming and calling for the same thing. Pretty much minority rights. We're a minority group. If they get their rights, we should get ours too. So if we stay behind them, you know, it's going to help them. So then they end up kind of, coming together. This is why when women should beware, when you enter into these women's rights groups, you may well also be entering into something else, which is what? LGBT rights as well. Okay, they're going to push you into that direction. See, this is the pressure that comes living in places like this. Living in the West, you are pressured to accommodate because they say, we will help you as long as you help us. So you have to be aware of these tricks. You have to be aware as a Muslim. See, understand, don't obey them. Hold fast to your principles. You don't need to accommodate them in things that are of disobedience to Allah. You hold fast to your religion. You hold fast to your principles. Do not compromise. They want to compromise with you so that you compromise with them. And that's how the liberals work. That's their trick. That's their technique. That's what they do with everybody. If we scratch your back, you scratch ours. So if you give them a little, they will want something back. They're showing you like they love you and they care about you. And it's a trick. It's a deception. Anybody who was born and raised here and has studied their sciences will know that's from the deception that they use in order to get the support that they need. If we help these people, this minority group, we'll join that minority group with us. We'll get their votes, we'll get their support, we'll get everything we need from them. So help the Muslims. Give the Muslims what they want, and then we'll tell them, now you got to help us. Muslim groups get trapped that way because they feel like, man, we owe them something. What do? They helped us build our masjid. What do we do now? Now they want us to come to their gay rights, march to show that unified support of, look at all these variety of different groups that are all in the march. It shows that they have this strong unity. You see what I'm saying? This image they want to present, a powerful image. Even Muslims are in the ranks. It's happening. It has happened. It's real. So don't look at this verse. وَلَا تُطِعْ مِنْهُمْ آثِمًا أَوْ كَفُورًا. Allah is ordering the Prophet ﷺ this. This is what he was approached with. They approached him. They tried to compromise with him. They tried to negotiate with him to take a little bit away from the Quran. Give up a little bit of this. Give up a little bit of that. Worship our gods for a year. We'll worship yours for a year. Come on. Let's compromise here. Don't compromise. As long as you are here, don't compromise. You're under pressure here in this country. Don't compromise. Don't give up what you have. Allah bless you. This is a ni'mah from Allah that He gave you what you have. Among all the people in the world, you have Islam. Don't give that ni'mah up. That's the greatest blessing you can have. Athiman, sinner due to his actions, by his actions, kafura, yani a disbeliever and ingrate in his heart. Allah is teaching the messenger, and this is also teaching this ummah, أنها لا ترضخ للكفار وللمنافقين في كل مكان وفي كل زمان. Don't yield. This verse teaches us not to yield, not to surrender to the hypocrites, not to surrender to the disbelievers in every time and in every place. Wherever you are, O Muslim, whatever country you live in, O Muslim, whatever time, generation you live in, doesn't matter if you're in the quote-unquote modern times. Some people say, oh, ya akhi, brother, we live in modern times, ya akhi. Why do we have to do this? Why do you have to pray 5 times a day, ya akhi? We live in different times. That was the time of Rasulullah. We don't ride camels anymore, brother. Astaghfirullah al-azim. The Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Musa alayhi salam, he said about his Lord, La yadillu rabbi wa la yansa. My Lord does not err, nor does He forget. Do you think that Allah did not know that what people are calling today modern times, He didn't know that it would come like this? Do you think that Allah did not know that we would be using electricity and we would have iPhones and cell phones and communicate by different means? You think Allah did not know this? Allah completed revelation in the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing exactly what it would be 1400 something years later. And what it will be 1400 something years after us, if it goes that far. Your Lord does not forget. Allah is not unaware. And He still made this the law. He made this your legislation. Be proud of it. Hey, that's proof that we are able to apply. We are able to establish this Quran before us in this time, in this country, wherever we may be. If you're on an island, كمثل هذا الرجل في على رأس الجبل. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, it's hadith ضعيف. ضعفه Shaykh Al-Albani, but there's a narrative about a man he was living on a peak of a mountain, right, surrounded by an ocean, miles upon miles on each side around the man. He worshipped Allah for 500 years. Wherever you are able to apply from the Quran what you can apply. Your Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make it a book where it's inapplicable at certain times from other times. It's applicable. We can worship Allah. And guess what? So the people can't say, no, we can't practice. But they're practicing the Quran. They're practicing it right now. They're doing it in front of our own eyes. How can we say we can't practice it then? There will be a people who will be able to establish this religion. Ta'ifa Mansura, Firqatun Najiyah. There will always be a group holding fast. And they will manifest what is in the book of Allah in front of the people. And the people can't say and argue, well, we can't practice the Quran in this day and time. Well, they're doing it. Where's the excuse then for us? Also, what's going to help the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala tabligh al-risala is the dhikr of Allah. What will also help the Messenger, Allah strengthens His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, in conveying His message is the dhikr of Allah. وَلِهَذَا قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في الآية التي بعده وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا أي لازم الذكر والدعاء والاستغفار في الصباح والمساء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said after that, remember the name of your Lord, morning and evening. So remember the name of your Lord. And remember the name of your Lord, morning and evening. These are the things that you need to encounter and confront the non-Muslims. You need sabr upon the book of Allah. And don't compromise in what is going to lead you to disobey Allah. And remembering Allah, dhikr of Allah ta'ala. The Shaykh is mentioning specifically a dua, a dhikr, supplication, dhikr in the morning, your morning and your evening supplications. أوراد الشرعية والأذكار والأدعية هذا يعينك على مشاق الحياة. This is going to help you with the difficulties of life. ويعينك على العمل. It's going to help you to worship Allah. فالذكر ما هو السهل يقول الشيخ. Dhikr, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is not something that's light. يحيي القلب. It gives life to the heart. وينشطك على العبادة. يعينك وينشطك على العبادة. It's going to help you and give you strength to worship Allah Ta'ala. بكرة أي في أول النهار وأصيلة في آخر النهار. In the morning and in the afternoon or evening. So the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ikhwan, you have to have patience. You want to live in this world, what you will encounter, what you will have to confront in this world, you need sabr. You need to not obey the disbelievers, and you need to make dhikr of Allah. Morning and evening. It's the book of Allah. Allah is mentioning this. Okay, that's the third thing. وفي رابع. Let's gather them up. There are four things in confronting and encountering non-Muslims, the kuffar. الأمر الأول فاصبر لحكم ربك. هذا أول. Be patient with the rule of your Lord, the order of your Lord. الثانية ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا. Don't obey the sinners among them and the ingrates and disbelievers among them. الثالثة واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا. Number three, remember the name of your Lord morning and evening. That includes prayer. That includes your adhkar, the morning supplications, the evening supplications. People, if they don't make them, you don't know what types of things will hit you. Because we are not able to fight and box with shaitan physically. How do you fight shaitan? That's the point. How do you fight shaitan? بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. When he makes the dhikr in the morning supplications, بعد صلاة الفجر مثلا يصلي صلاة الفجر ثم يذكر الله بالأذكار الأوراد الشرعية في الصباح. Then he makes those supplications. It will protect him from many unseen things that he would not imagine that will come his way. And the fourth now, يقول الله ومن الليل فاسجد له. And during the night, prostrate to him. Meaning the night prayer. فقيام الليل له تأثير عجيب في المسلم إذا اعتاده. The night prayer, it has a tremendous, mighty effect on the Muslim when he gets accustomed to doing it. وإذا داوم عليه ولو كان قليلا. If he gets accustomed, he does it all the time, but even if it's just a little. ولهذا قال الله يقول الله ومن الليل يعني بعض الليل جزء من الليل ما قال الليل كله رحمة من Allah. In this verse, Allah said, and some of the night prostrate to Him. Some of the night. ما قال all of the night. He didn't say all of the night. So Allah specified taking a portion of the night. Be consistent in it. It will help you in your life and in your hereafter. وَسَبِّحُ لَيْلًا طَوِيلًا. And glorify, meaning the night prayer for a long night through. Give a good share of your night. سَبِّحُ يعني نزهه. التسبيح معناه تنزيه الله من العيوب والنقائص. So glorify Allah from all those things that are not befitting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. when he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says, Subhanallah, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. When he's saying Subhana, he's saying, we translate as glory to you, O Allah. But what does it really mean? Yes, it's like we're saying, Oh Allah, when we say Subhanak ya Rabbi, or Subhanak ya Rabbana, when we say Subhanallah, you're saying, I declare Allah to be free of any flaw. That's the meaning behind it. So when he says this, this is also a response to the belief of Christians, because Subhanallah, amma yaqulun. Ta'ala Allahi an dhalik. Yaqulun in Isa ibn Maryam, yastahiq al-ibadah. They say that Allah, Jesus, reserves a right to be worshipped. Allah is high above this, that anything else reserve any right. Isa alayhi salam was makhluk, he was created. When you glorify Allah with that, you're freeing yourself from the belief that Allah comes in the form of a man. This is a naqs lillah, because human beings, muhtajun, they are in need. What do humans need? يقول الله عن عيسى ابن مريم وأمه كانا يأكلان الطعام. Jesus and his mother used to eat food. What's wrong with you? You're worshipping two beings that have needs. Ta'ala Allahi an dhalik. Subhanallah. Allah is perfect, free of that. He doesn't have needs. When you say Subhanallah, you're saying Allah doesn't have needs. Allah is free of needs. He's free of imperfection. He is free of anything that is opposed to absolute kamal, perfection for Allah. Tayyib, we're going to stop here. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and all of you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the characteristics of these righteous. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.